Hey, what's up? My name is Zach Swafford. I am a co-founder at Dart, here to talk about how we do coding with AI here at Dart these days. Quick evolving subject, things change a lot. So this may be out of date soon, but I'm talking here at the end of February 2026 about the subject. So got a few slides to show. I'm also going to do a live demo. You can see I'm sharing my full screen. I will be switching back and forth between this and the slides and cursor and stuff. So if you can watch this video on a monitor, that could be the most useful. I will link to the slides in the description. And yeah, let's get right into it. So the overall agenda in general here, I wanted to just talk about how we code with AI at Dart and some tips in general for applying this either at Dart or elsewhere. I'm going to do a live demo that I have not prepared for at all. I've done this presentation a few times. I've always done different demos, so we'll see how it goes. We'll talk about some tips. I want to talk briefly about the history of coding with AI because I actually think that's informative in terms of where things are going and also what we can do. Yeah, okay, this will work. Where things are going and kind of the history is also informative because you might recognize like where you are along the spectrum of coding with AI adoption. Going to talk specifically about context management. I think that will probably not mean what you might think it means. And skills and MCPs as well. Those are kind of like add-ons, bonuses, things you can do with your coding agents or your coding chats that make them even more powerful. And then just a number of tactical workflow tips. So that's the overall agenda here. Let's start in on the demos. Like I said, we're going to do two things. These are literally just tasks that I have in my current engineering sprint. I have not tried them yet. We're just going to give them to AI and see how it goes. And we'll just kind of set AI to working and then come back periodically throughout the presentation to see how things are progressing. So the first task I want to start is a GitHub Copilot integration. So this is our production Dart environment. And this is the task that I wanted to start. So there's a little bit of context in this, but I'm basically going to copy the link and then jump into Cursor. I use Cursor. I'm going to strongly recommend using Codex these days. Cursor specifically is a little bit orthogonal. It's kind of the standard IDE, but it's just the same as VS Code, particularly since I'm not really using the Cursor like AI features, except a little bit of tab autocomplete in theory. VS Code would be just as good, or any other IDE that allows you to use AI in it. But really the important part is the AI chat panel. This could also be in a separate terminal though, honestly, so it doesn't even really matter that much. This is the task I was working on before, so I'm going to start a new task. I use voice to text for all of my prompts, so I'm going to do that. We'll talk more about that, but I strongly recommend you use voice to do all of your prompting, actually, whether it's conversational or for coding or whatever. It just allows you to give a lot more information, and the more information, the better. So I'm going to paste the start link, and then I'm going to just start dictating. I started a shortcut here. So this task is what we're going to do right now. Read the task and then actually click the link in the task and read the Copilot documentation there. Probably take some browsing. This is going to be like the Copilot API docs. What we're going to do right now is we're going to make a new dedicated agent type in Dart for accessing GitHub Copilot. It's like an external agent. There's actually a README doc about how to do this process. So you should be able to follow the steps in that README. It ends up making like about 5 files. There's always exactly 5 files basically, or something like that, maybe 6 or something, that need to be added and edited. It's pretty straightforward. So just find that README, follow the steps in that README to make that, and then implement the Python backend, kind of following some of the similar processes that you can see documented in some of the other Python agents there. That will make the REST calls to the Copilot API, which you'll learn about through those docs. And oh, for icons, just use placeholders. If we have an existing GitHub icon, you can just use that one. I'll replace the two icons afterward. Yeah, otherwise, try to find like good values for the default configuration values on the front end. And oh yeah, if you need an example of another coding agent, we used to have an integration with CodeGen, so you can look through the Git history to find that. It's actually completely removed from the code base now, but if you need another example of a coding agent or another example of an agent, just to inform the exact pattern in this case, you could look at that one too. But the existing agents may be sufficient as well. So now I'm going to edit this. I actually just edited that because I started talking. I started recording before I started talking. Usually I do not edit this at all. I don't do anything. I just send it. And then I will just like leave and go do something else. In this case, we actually have another task that I was going to do in the background. This one is going to be super one-shottable. The best way to do two things at once is technically with Git work trees, or in some cases, 2 copies of the repo downloaded locally. So it's opening Playwright here just on its own. Oh, that's weird. Well, we'll see. We'll see what it figures out. I don't know how. I don't know why it's doing this. Well, it figured it out, I guess. And this is actually something else I wanted to talk about. So in general, do not watch the thing work. I actually intentionally, in fact, I'm going to go back to the slides now. I would not watch your agent working because they will like try things, and sometimes you'll think, oh, that's the wrong approach or whatever, and often it is the wrong approach, but it will like figure out the right approach. And it would be like micromanaging an employee, where every time they like open a file or look at a part of the code base that's not like perfect, you told them not to. You stopped them and were like, wait, don't. And definitely don't read the thinking. Don't read the stuff that it's doing. Just let it run. At this point, they're good enough. Just let it run. It'll come up with a diff in the end. Just look at the diff. Cool. So there's more I want to talk about with voice and some of that stuff, but I also wanted to start the second task before it gets too far away. This one should be really one-shottable, like I was saying. So I'm going to pull up this task and copy this. This one has no description, so actually it doesn't even matter. I'm not going to paste it in. I'll just say on the back end right now, there in the populate file, there are strings that have the default skills. Then these correspond in each case to a value for the enum of those skills. Copy those skills to the front end as well, and then do add a button to the left of the microphone button in the skills UI, only for default skills. So this button shouldn't appear. It also shouldn't appear if the text exactly matches the default text. But if it doesn't, the undo button should just be the undo icon, matching styles with the microphone icon right next to it. That button should appear, and it should have a tooltip that's like revert to default for this prompt or something like that. And for this skill, revert skill to default, something like that. And then when you click it, it should open a confirmation dialog. And then when you confirm that, it should revert the skill to the default text, basically. That's it. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to send that, and then we see both of them are working here. Nothing has started to code yet even. That's great. I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to head off and go back to the presentation. We'll come back shortly. Some do's and don'ts in general for coding with AI. Um, this slide is out of date. My bad. Do's and don'ts. Do keep checking back every few weeks because things are moving very quickly. I have found that people will develop impressions about coding with AI, and this is very reasonable for normal, slow moving technology, and they'll be like, oh, it's not good enough. I'll try it back in a year or maybe never. Um, Things are moving very, very quickly. Most recently, things have really changed a lot as recently as like 2 months ago. November 2026 is like, or 2025, excuse me, is like a huge inflection point in the coding with AI like world where everyone agrees that the models that came out then have kind of made agentic coding like much more of a thing. We'll see in the phases area, but I think we've like moved forward a phase essentially. Um, in addition, I would say most recently like Codex 5.3 has come out. Up until then, I had been using Claude Code, but I try new models all the time and new things when things come out and improvements are made. Um, Codex 5.3 is way, way, way better than anything that's come before, including the most recent Claude model, in my opinion. Objectively, I feel like it's a lot faster and has like crushed a lot of tasks that the old things couldn't. Um, but you know, there's always preferences. All the more reason because there's so much preferential stuff. All the more reason that you've got to try stuff every so often. In addition, it's important to get over the hump with configuration and learning. This isn't the kind of thing that you can just try once and see if it's good, and then you'll probably what'll happen is you'll be like, oh, that's not very useful, and then you'll leave, and that won't work. You've got to spend some time optimizing your setup, learning how to do this stuff. This video is a really good place to start, I think, but it's going to take some time. It's a new skill to learn. It's not just like a new tool that might take a weekend or an hour of like learning the buttons and stuff. It's more like a new discipline or a new skill that might take months or even years. I feel like I've been learning and improving on how to work with AI, how to code with AI for years. Since it started essentially. Um, do invest in repo setup as well. Adding in like a Claude MD file, an Agents MD file, these sorts of things, and setting up your configuration for your repo, for your project does help. It will save time and context and tokens and stuff. It's similar to the second point actually in terms of just, actually doing the configuration and stuff. Um, and also number four, give it as much detail as you have. This is something that I've already alluded to here, but maybe historically there was this idea that, oh, we don't have much context, we need like a really tight prompt that perfectly explains and encapsulates the exact needs, or oh, we should only give it really small tasks which are kind of inherently are like really one sentence descriptions, or maybe maybe there was this idea that prompt engineering is like this complicated discipline and you have to carefully write the exact right thing. I think all of that is either not the case or no longer the case or whatever. I think it's important to just give it as much detail as you have. You saw with my voice prompts, I just brain dumped. Sometimes I'll say, oh, never mind about that stuff. And it'll, actually do this, and I'll just send it all of that. And it doesn't matter. The more you give, the better it works. It's the same as if you had a meeting with a colleague or an employee to tell them what everything you know about a project. Sort of the more you can say about it, the better. It's not about crafting like a one sentence perfect description. It's about giving them all the information that you have. Um, Yeah, I think voice is really good for that. I'll just skip ahead to that point because I've already mentioned it a couple times. Voice is really important because when you're typing, nobody types that fast. Um, my typing words per minute are 60, not that great, but not terrible. My Talking words per minute is like 120. And it really frees you up as well for like new types of thinking. And also, it just makes you say more. I think so. Apropos of what I'm saying here, like if you can just say more and give all the context rather than being like, oh, I'm tired of typing, like I guess I'll finish after this sentence. That's just better. So it builds the right habits to do voice. Voice is still maybe a little bit tricky for stuff like email or Slack, where you want to have a perfect tone and perfect formatting and stuff. Even that stuff is actually improving, I would say. Like Whisper Flow is the app that I use, and they do a pretty good job formatting stuff. If you speak in certain ways, and it learns from your mannerisms and your text formats, and it can write a pretty good email that sounds like you, is formatted like you, whatever. But none of that stuff matters for prompting. So it's even better for prompting, because what matters for prompting, and this includes in a chat context as well, by the way, is to just dump as much info as you can. Um, do not give up after your first try. This is true of life, I guess, but also in particular here. Don't give up after your first prompt. This is a huge one. People will put in one prompt. Probably it's too short. They also just, are trying to put all the information in. They get back a response that's like, this is true in chat too, by the way, not just agentic coding. They get back a response that's not perfect, and they're like, AI doesn't work. Like the response wasn't good enough. Um, Give it one more iteration. I'm not necessarily saying iterate ad nauseum. Literally just respond once and say, here's all the stuff you did wrong, and improve that. And the second time around will like always be almost perfect, in my experience. Um, same with model stuff. Same with other learning stuff here, basically as well. Do not keep going with the same chat for very long. This I can't stress this enough. This is a classic mistake, both in chats and in AI coding. The AI coding, like they try to let you do the same chat for a long time by what's called compaction, where they like shrink down the context window. They try to summarize what's happened before, and then let you keep going. Um, Chats that go on for a long time, either chats or agents or whatever, and they just have the super long context window, even if they try to compact it, they just get dumber and dumber. There's this inclination to think that agents are, or that chats get smarter as they go on because you've told them more things. But in reality, they're getting dumber. Their knowledge about the matter that at hand is maybe increasing because you've told them what's going on, but they get that it's a pretty well documented thing that past 40% of the context window is what we call the dumb zone, where they're essentially just not as smart anymore. And they forget stuff and they miss out on stuff and they just do bad things. Ideally, you keep everything in like a small amount of context right at the beginning. This is a problem that may also be solved over time. That, I mean, I don't see a theoretical reason why this can't be improved, but at least right now, and this gets back to the earlier point about, staying on top of things and everything, you're going to get way better results if you just start a new chat. It can be annoying because you have to re-explain everything in a new chat. This is again true in real life as well. If you have any really long chats like in ChatGPT, you might find that it starts repeating itself. It starts like making dumber and dumber suggestions like later on. You're trying to, solve something in your life, or you're trying to figure out the right thing, the right tool, the right way to use something, and you're in ChatGPT and you just keep saying stuff and it just keeps messing up. Start a new chat. Like you're never gonna, once it gets into a dumb zone, once it gets looping and stuff and saying the same stuff over and over, you're never gonna like break free of that. Just like start a new chat, re-explain the starting situation. Sometimes you could get the initial chat to like summarize the situation in a paragraph and then paste that in if you really are scared of like retyping the situation. But honestly, even the exercise of like starting a new chat and like re-summarizing from scratch what you're trying to do and what the deal is very powerful. You'll always have learned something from the first chat, so you'll be able to like summarize the situation better, debug better, that kind of thing. So context management, trying to keep under 40% of the context window. for every LLM use is definitely something to pay attention to. We've already talked about this, so I'm not going to talk much about this, but don't assume you can get good at coding with AI in a weekend. This is a new discipline. It's not a new tool or a new, doohickey. Um, and then this last one, I guess, don't plan to keep going with coding and software engineering without these skills. Um, I can't pretend to know exactly what the future holds, but I think that these skills make good coders way, way better and faster, and they make learning coders and worse coders like way, way better and faster. And it's hard for me to imagine that there will be too many software engineers in 10 years that don't use tons of AI. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know exactly what the future holds with these kinds of roles, but I do think that staying abreast of these things, if you want to stay in this discipline, is the best thing to do. Stay up to speed with this stuff. And yeah, I also think the evolution of this is going to be interesting. I'll talk about that in the next slide, but I also think we can probably check back in on our coding. So let's see. Looks like they're both done. I'm going to start with this one because it's simpler. I'm just going to review. Looks like we only changed 2 files. I These files will probably not be conflicting because these 2 tasks just aren't in the same place. Again, the correct thing to be doing here would be to be using work trees so these aren't all in the same branch. And if I were going to commit them, it would be easy and safe to just commit them to 2 separate branches. But for now, I am just going to deal with the fact that they're kind of conflicting here. Okay, chat and skill editor and skill. So we're going to look in here. Again, this is the production Dart code base. Yeah, import changes, looks good. Cool. So and this is something that's very important, getting good, if you aren't already, getting good at code review, right? So I'm just now reading this diff. I'm not approving any changes. I'm just going to go through and look and see what looks good. Uh-huh. 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 Yep, this all makes sense. And cool. Directionally, this is making sense. Confirmation dialog wrapper. Yep. Yep. So I'm going to stash these changes. I actually didn't see anything that I wanted it to improve just in my quick look here. Oftentimes what I'll do is, yeah, and then this map. Yep, this is making sense. These are the copies of the prompts. So I'm going to stage this. This is another technique that I have. Different people prefer different things here, but in general, a really nice workflow, however you can get it to work, is to look at the changes, do a quick review of them, and then ask for more changes. And one problem with that, if you just do it as diff on diff on diff, is that you don't know which ones you've kind of already approved and seen and which ones are the additional changes on top of that. So in this particular case, I am actually just staging these. Well, not just in this case. This is just my preferred way of doing this workflow. So I saw these changes. I can either stage them by hunk or by overall file. And I'm kind of saying, essentially I'm saying, yeah, these changes look good. I approve of these changes. And I'm staging them here. That then means that if I request follow-ups to these files, they're going to show up as an additional diff. And then I can just separately, independently review those changes on top of that. So let's just, in order to demo another thing here, I'm going to say, let's look through it in play. Oh, and I should be speaking actually, sorry. Let's look through it in Playwright together. Open up the thing in Playwright, bypass the login, and then open up a skill editor, and then I'll play around with it there with you. So Normally, in this particular case, I would probably just open this myself in the browser, but it could be useful depending on how things shake out to see, to have the model see what's going on. And so this, we'll get into this in a bit, but having the model actually have access to your UI and so it can take screenshots, see problems, see changes, etc., is super useful as well. Um, This is not working, of course, live demo, but maybe I will. Well, and I guess I'm contradicting my own advice here because probably I should just like let it work and kind of see what happens. Um, but okay, closed it. All right, let's see. So, well, as I was saying, I guess the big thing here, here we are, perfect, is to get the AI access to your front end, so it can actually see what's going on as well. Now, we do have two changes here, which could potentially mean that we, have got. I haven't even reviewed the other code yet, so of course there could be a problem there. Again, this can be improved with, different local environments or different preview environments with different changes. But all right, so we're navigating to skills now, and the AI is doing all of this itself. I only mess things up by trying to help. And I think we will probably load that soon, and then I can take a look. While we do that, I guess I would probably be looking at these diffs. I don't want this to just become me reviewing everything here. So I will probably not carefully review all of this right now. But I think, I guess I should probably just explain that at a quick look, this looks perfect. We're going to need to test it, obviously. We'll probably need to write some tests and test this myself. I think I'll need, just looking at this, I'll probably want some copy tweaks as well. But by and large, this looks exactly like what I expected. The 5 files that I mentioned earlier are all set up here. Yeah, I think we're looking good. So let's see what's going on here. This is not loading, I expect. So another really powerful thing, and we'll get into this as well, is allowing the AI to access the console logs. We are able to do that again with like the Playwright MCP. I would just recommend the Playwright MCP in general as like the right way to give the AI access to the browser. And then also just make sure it has access to your backend logs as well, so that those logs, if you ask it to do some logging, it can like go in and tail the logs there and kind of see, like dynamically have its own loop going with that. Um, okay, well this is not working super well, so I'm actually just gonna try in a non-Playwright browser. I'm not sure what's going on with this, but let's just see if we can get the page to load overall. It did load a minute ago, but well, I'll come back to this in a sec. Like I was saying, I don't want to spend too much time on the actual like debugging and stuff like that. I think you might just have to take my word for it unless we can get this running. But I think that in both of these cases, both of these two chunks are like 90% there. This one might have been one-shotted. It might be perfect to start. This guy, like I said, I'll probably need some copy changes. We'll definitely need to test it. But yeah, I think it is looking great. Maybe I can get this working by stashing some stuff. So I'll probably do git stash. Um, yeah, that's what I want to do. So this is how I will stash everything except yeah, I stashed the changes on the first PR, and now I'm just gonna look at the skills one. So let's see if we can get that to load. Anyway, though, let's talk about phases for a sec. So in general here, the phases of coding with AI. I've identified 7. This is sort of my framework. I don't really have like a Probably other people smarter than I have thought about this more and have like already made a framework like this or better than this, but this is kind of the way I think about it. And these phases are essentially old school, no AI, nothing, right? Um, Number two, chat, copy, and paste. So this is right when ChatGPT came out. You would put your problem into ChatGPT and be like, "Hey, can you like generate the code for this?" And then you'd copy it in and copy it out and put it back in your code. Number three, better autocomplete. This was like Cursor's big innovation. When Cursor came out, the big thing about Cursor was like tab to autocomplete. So you would press tab, and it went from like old school autocomplete, just filling out the properties of a given, like model or something. You type in the dot. If you typed a dot, and it would like give you access to the properties. That would be like old school autocomplete. Cursor autocomplete was like it could potentially write a whole function for you. If you wrote the function signature, it could. And with good documentation, it might fill out a simple like helper function or something with the code. Number four, auto coding with approvals and keep discard. This is the careful, like not sure if the coding agent is really going to work, like kind of version of auto coding, where you might, and this is still I think how Cursor works by default. If you use the Cursor coding, where you'll put in what you want it to do, and it will um, uh, ask for permission for a bunch of stuff. It'll be like, oh, are you sure you want to do this action? Is Cursor allowed to do this? And then when it does finish, it will like generate a diff with like keep discard in line, and you'll do like your own little mini code review in Cursor itself. That specific last part, it's all just part of this idea of like being very careful with AI code. So I think that's why like that's all grouped into phase number four. I guess if you like that UX for Cursor, it could be good. In the end, I think it probably is similar to my stashing workflows, but I would recommend like going more towards stage five now, which is what I've been demoing here, and which is kind of the more YOLO version. YOLO is honestly like a term of art in AI at this point, where basically what this means is just like you're not doing a lot of approvals and permissions. You're not being like super careful. You're literally just telling it what you want, and then it runs. This is what I was demoing now, and this is what I would recommend for pretty much everybody. You can always stash stuff. You can always get reset hard if you don't like what you got. There's no downside to just letting it run. And as you can see, like it just does everything amazingly, and everything just like works. So my environment's not working right now. I'll just pause and get it working, and then I'll come back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. Just a silly mistake, and we are good to go. Things have been moving a little slow because of the screen recording and Docker, everything on my local machine, but we'll figure it out. This is the testing that we're doing. So I'm just going to test this skill revert thing. You can see here, this is the Dart UI. This is a AI skill, basically a like reusable skill that you can use to do like a common action, and we have certain default ones. This is still the default prompt. I'm gonna do that, and then the backspace button should appear here. I don't love that it's lagging based on the uh, like the throttling, so I'm going to see if we can fix that. Styling looks good. Revert skill prompt to default. Okay. I don't love all of the using the word prompt. We don't generally use that in the copy anymore. I probably said it in my description to the AI. So I'm going to take another pass at this really quick, and then I'll let it be, and we'll keep going. So let's see. Um, All right, I'm just gonna iterate here. So don't use the word prompt in any of the copy. Um, the Yeah, we don't usually use that. So fix the tooltip and the description and the confirmation dialog text. Just be like text or something. You choose the copy, but we just don't generally use the word prompt for skills. Add the undo icon to the confirmation dialog. That is, there's kind of a slot for the icon, just to make the confirmation dialog look nicer. And then lastly, if you can, try to enable and disable the button or hide and not show it immediately rather than waiting on the throttle manager to save the new version of the skill and then showing the button. See if you can base it off of the current text for real so that it like shows up more immediately and disappears more immediately if it matches. Okay, so I'm gonna let that be. We'll see probably new diff on this guy when that's done. I'm not gonna spend the time to review this one in this video, but I think I'll probably be basically, one additional prompt, just like this, probably one additional prompt to tweak the copy. I'll have to put in the icons myself, and then, yeah, maybe I'll tell it to write some tests or something, and then we should be good. Um, oh, and by the way, too, I mean, these agents are also just pretty good at writing tests on their own. Probably the only reason it didn't is because the rest, the existing code is not super well tested. So a lot of times they do a better job testing than we do, which is awesome. Um, okay, so looking good. Let's get back to the phases. So we talked some about YOLO autocode. This is where Dart is doing most of its work now. The next phase after that that we're getting into is online assignment makes a PR directly. This is what a lot of the online coding agents might do, and this is kind of meta, but we're actually this is the feature that we're working on with that first demo, where we're integrating a GitHub Copilot agent into Dart so that in Dart you can just directly assign a task to the agent. So let's look here what this is going to mean, and I guess this might be working now-ish, is that yeah, there will be a little Copilot option here. This is new in this branch as we're working on this, but the Copilot option here is something where we can go in and set up. Looks like, yeah, this is all the stuff that was just added. Generally, this is looking about right. I'll need to check these steps, obviously, and actually test it, change the icon. But yeah, I mean, so the big idea with this is just that for simple tasks, and we're already doing this at Dart, lots of people are, but for simple tasks, you would just directly assign an agent like Copilot or an online hosted Claude Code or hosted Codex or Devin. There are a number of online agents, and the big idea with these is that they just take the task, all the context is in the task, they from your task management system, and they take that and then they work on the PR. They open a PR in GitHub, and you go from there. Maybe you review the PR and tell it what to improve and stuff. Cursor is a big one. The cursor is the one that we use at Dart now when we do this ourselves. Um, Cursor has an online hosted agent thing that you can call and do that work. So that's going to be kind of the next phase where you're not even working in IDE. You're literally just telling it what to do, and it makes a branch, it makes a PR. You iterate together, and it finishes. And then the final phase, I guess, after that would be human out of the loop, where you kind of the PR is auto reviewed by agents that are really good at reviewing, and maybe even Dart AI is doing the project management for you, and so it is telling you, it's already doing a lot of the like, oh, here's what needs to be done next. Here, I'm going to spec the task in a way that an agent can run from it, and then human out of the loop might also be the wrong way to put this because it would be more like maybe you're setting the vision. You're like an engineering manager or even a company executive, and you're setting the vision, and then Dart plans all the tasks, agents work on them, review them, merge them. A day later, you've got new features, a new product line, whatever, in your software. Um, that's the vision. Yeah, so in that world, like coders become more like PMs, maybe more like um, engineering managers, and managing like a fleet of agents, making sure everything is going well, accomplishing high level things, setting high level objectives, features, working with users to see what people actually need and want. That would be that's sort of the future, as I see it, at least for the software profession, and as agents get more and more powerful, basically. Context management. We've already talked some about this. Here's a graphic about it. Ralph loop is a term of art that I could talk about a little bit right at the end, but and it's also just it's very fad. This is the fad right now, with like Ralph Wiggum loops and stuff. But the big idea with all of this is about context management. So you want to keep all of your work in the some amount of the context window. So this is the beginning where it has a system prompt and um, the like tools and MCPs and stuff. This is the stuff that you actually like put in and tell it what to do, and then this is the like implementation where it's actually like working, reading files, like thinking, doing the work, writing the diffs, that kind of thing. Um, Vibe coding here is like constantly just like filling up the whole thing and then compacting and filling up the whole thing and compacting, and this just kind of guarantees that it's always like pretty dumb. So the big idea is you start a chat, you do this stuff, you have it do a thing, and you like kill it before it gets like too far. Um, the at sign is something. This is just kind of a reference, uh, where like in these kinds of things, I guess actually interestingly in Codex it's more of a plus, but you can do slash or at. I guess the at sign is to reference a file. So if I wanted to, yeah, reference this file, this is meta, but this is how I'd reference it. Most of these AI coding tools, there's like an at sign where you would use to like tell it kind of what context to look at. We have something similar in Dart. When you're having an AI chat, you would like tell it to look at specific files and stuff. I actually don't recommend doing that anymore. If you know the very specific file that you want the thing to be working on, you can reference it by name in your voice. It does save time to be more specific like that, so you may as well. If you really want to, you can tag the specific file, typing it out with at and stuff. That just takes more time, and it's not really necessary. Like the agent can find the file, and if you tell it the name of the file, it can definitely find the file. So I don't really. It doesn't hurt anything, but I don't really recommend spending a lot of time like tagging the right context with that. Do put in like links. Again, put in as much as you know, but like it can find stuff too. You can put in links to specific web pages. I kind of did that with the GitHub task where I like linked it to the doc, like the API docs. But like you don't have to. You can just it can explore on its own most of the time. Yeah, just tell it what you know. We already talked a lot about the dumb zone. Um, Status line, this is kind of how to manage your context. So um, in Codex here, you can see actually, I think probably a lot of it has to do with Playwright, but I'm actually already past the dumb zone here. I'm pushing this, so I'm definitely not going to continue with this chat. If I did want anything else from this, which I probably won't, what I would do is I would, let's see, I'll look at this, look at the copy really quick. I'll be like, yeah, it shows text, obviously. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. I think this is perfect, honestly, so I'd actually just commit this. But if I did want to follow up, I would start a new chat, and I would be like, voice to text. Hey, we've got some stage changes that we're working on this feature for adding such and such, and like here's some of the additional context. I'll re-explain the situation, but in short form because it's already done most of the work, and I'll be like, can you just take another pass at the copy? Or I might even be like, another agent wrote this code. Can you like review it with a critical eye? Is there anything we could simplify? Any bugs you can see? In fact, why not? I'll just do that right now. ignore the changes that are not staged, but there's two stage changes right here. We're adding this like revert or undo, reset to default button. Can you just do a quick review of those two changed staged files and see if there's anything we could simplify or any code smells or bugs you can find or anything like that? Feel free to make a change if it's obvious, or just like list it out for me if you see anything. And then again, I'll let this run. I don't usually do this for something this simple, but as a demo, this is just like a little self-review here. Maybe we can make some improvements. As always, I'm not going to read what it's thinking, but in some cases, and in this case, I will read what it prints at the end to see like kind of what it suggests. Anyway, back to this. Oh yeah, monitoring status. So you can see now we're back to just a few tokens, not at 40%, not over 40% yet. Let's check my other one. This is adding the Copilot agent. Yeah, sometimes these don't update correctly, but whatever. In Claude Code, there's this concept called a status line, which you can kind of set up to show information here. I have a custom status line set up to show the percentage. I'm not using Claude Code as much anymore, but because Codex is so much better now. But this is kind of this is the way to see how many tokens are being used in the current branch and or in the current chat, I mean, and kind of what we can do to improve that. And then you would monitor this and say, okay, 40%. Anyway, monitoring your context, basically, one way or another. Start a new chat. All right, skills and MCPs. There's this concept, one of the hot new things the past month or two is this concept of skills, which are basically they're almost like scripts, except they're just markdown files. They explain how to do something to an agent. They're reusable things. Dart has had this built in for quite a long time, actually, of just a reusable prompt that the model can access if it needs it, or you can explicitly tell it, hey, use this skill. These are great. There's big communities of them. You can use them to do things like you can write your own to do common things. It's also great for something like OpenClaw, where you can have it do a reusable action and stuff. But yeah, I would just browse the community for the ones that are the most useful for you. And then MCP servers as well, right? So MCP servers are APIs for agents or for chats. Dart has an MCP where you can, you saw it, the agent used the Dart MCP to access the link and read the Dart data about the task. I would definitely recommend setting up your project management system with MCP so that you don't have to copy paste everything in. And it could make new tasks and new things as well if you wanted to. And then, yeah, Playwright MCP is probably the top one to make sure that it has access to logs and actually seeing the UI. And then, yeah, having an easy run command, an easy way to see the backend logs is also important so that the agent can just spin stuff up and, good documentation. A lot of the stuff that's good practice for a user or for a new developer is also good for an agent. If you have a great README that has all your commands and is easily accessible and searchable and something that an agent can understand and then use, it's going to be able to find those bash commands that it needs to actually do some work. If that's all a mess, then it won't know, and you'll have to build a skill for it, or you have to tell it every time here's how to check the logs or whatever, right? And I'll talk more about the logs bit in just a second. This is the last slide, and this is just about a few tactical workflow tips. I've already discussed a lot of these, so we're close to the end. Running multiple at once, we've seen that. You can definitely do that. I would definitely recommend it unless you have a lot of other work. It is annoying because I think, at least for me, I used to be a very focused coder and I used to only think about one thing. I thought I prided myself actually on focusing deeply, doing deep work on one task at a time. This is a new age, and that the skills now are more switching between tasks quickly. So I will do other work while the agent is running. I will do 2 or 3 tasks at once. etc. Work trees are the correct way to, as I've said before, the correct way to kind of do things at once. But you can also just do them in the same branch and then stage and commit separately or whatever. That's almost as easy as long as there aren't like conflicting edits and stuff. Sort of a preference thing. For me, it's really I just haven't taken the time to like fully set up work trees yet. So once I do that, I'll be doing more of that. There's also tools like Conductor and the Codex desktop app that manage a lot of that for you as well. So I can also recommend those as a way to manage multiple things at once. And again, I really would recommend doing multiple things at once because sitting twiddling your thumbs and maybe like micromanaging the agent while it works is like actively counterproductive. So at the very least, do other non-coding work while the agent works and come back every so often. Set up notifications so that every time it like finishes its turn, you come back and take another look. Staging files, we've already talked about that. That's like my preferred workflow. It's sort of recommended by the Codex lead as well. He said that's what he does. He told me that one-on-one, but there's a lot of good ways, I guess, to like review each diff one at a time. But I really do like this workflow specifically because you can stage the stuff that you like and that you've reviewed. You could also just commit every time, I guess. If you're, yeah, I mean, you could like locally commit and then maybe squash everything into one commit when it's all finished. That would be approximately as good. Might even be better because you could go back through the full commit history if you ever needed. Um, but yeah, something where you can like mark reviewed the AI changes and then do another turn. Yeah. Voice dictation, we've talked about that ad nauseum. Logging, let's talk about this one. So I've alluded to this already, but this is a super important tactic, in my opinion, to actually unlock a new level of debugging. And what I will the key here is basically to tell AI to write some logs and then to make sure it has access to read the logs. If you don't have that second thing, you can like complete the cycle yourself by copying and pasting all the time. But let's say that you've got a UI bug, race condition, really hard to debug. You haven't, you give it straight to AI, right? Let's even see if we can do an example here. Let's see. Well, okay. In the best case, I guess maybe we would even have a bug here. Let's check the skills and see if the thing that it did with the throttle manager actually works. So, okay, that looks good. I'm going to revert that to check. Backspace. Okay, it worked. Darn it. Too good. Let's just go ahead and pretend that this didn't work and that we need. Okay, I'm gonna just take a quick look at this. Yeah, I'm gonna give this a slightly closer review offline, but I think it's good. Let's just pretend this didn't work. I'm gonna stash some of the other stuff so it's not distracting us, and then we'll just look at this stuff, and I will say something like, okay, so everything's staged, we're all good. Awesome, thanks. There's a subtle race condition here where if you do a revert while it's still saving, it there's a competing race. Go ahead and add a ton of console logging. Don't actually try to debug it right now. Just like add a bunch of console logging, and then read the console logs yourself using Playwright, and play around with it. Read the console logs, and then see if you can figure out the race condition I'm talking about, and basically debug it with the logs. When you're done, you can remove the logs. Well, no, when you're done, let me take a look, and then we'll remove the logs. Okay, kind of a fool's errand here because as far as I know, there isn't actually a bug. But the big idea that I wanted to demo here is that basically let's say you've got a really bad bug that yeah, I can't just like one shot, and it, maybe it tries a couple times, it's failing. Start a new chat and be like, hey, here's a situation. We haven't been able to figure it out yet. Add a bunch of logs and then read the logs and see what's going on. And it will do, I mean, it's a classic tactic for debugging code as a person too, but the AI, it's just like a new tool in the AI's toolbox. B, AI does a much better job of adding logging. Humans will often like add one or two print statements and like that won't be enough and they'll go back and they'll add again and blah blah blah. AI just like adds a billion print statements. Now, for a human, that wouldn't really work because that would be an overwhelming number of print statements, and you'd have to like really sift through the logs as the next step. Doesn't matter. AI reads 100 or 500 lines of logs, tons and tons of information, immediately finds like, oh wow, like this thing happened before this, and the value was 4 instead of 5, and therefore like that explains everything. Like let's just change that at this case. Tons and tons of problems, particularly these race condition kinds of problems, can be very hard for you to debug, very hard for AI to debug. Super easy if you just go through this logging thing. You can have it print time-stamped stuff on the back end too. Same deal on the back end. Of course, we have a make logs command that allows the AI to tail the recent backend logs. But you can also, and with the timestamps, you can also like even interleave front end and back end logs. Build your own trace. Have the AI build its own trace and just kind of figure out like what the problem is between those two places. I already demoed this a little bit. This is a Claude code command for review. There are tons of cool ways to do this. We use a tool built on top of GitHub called Graphite, which has like built-in review. Cursor has a review bot that runs on all of our PRs. I would definitely, at this point, this is another one of those things that was like bad 6 months ago, but now like AI review bots are so good. Definitely have at least 2 AI review bots reviewing every PR on GitHub. Cursor, Rabbit, Code Rabbit, Claude, just setting up a Claude action in your GitHub Actions for Claude to self-review with this command. Codex, similar, all these kinds of things. Graphite has a reviewer as well. All these kinds of things are really good ways to self-review. And you can, of course, trigger the command yourself, too. You also don't need to use the command. We just, as you saw a minute ago in Codex, I just started a new chat, and I said, hey, an agent did this thing. Like, check it out, see if there's any, like, things you can improve, right? I mean, super simple. In that case, I also allowed it to make changes if it saw anything, but you could, of course, just say, like, just tell it, don't make any changes. Just list out the stuff that you think could be improved about this, and does a great job. And if you're concerned about anything in particular as well, be sure to say that, right? Be sure to just be like, oh, I'm not sure about this particular thing, or, oh, I think that it may have messed this part up, or like, oh, I don't really understand this logic, so I'm nervous about that. Can we simplify it? Tell it what you want. Tell it what you're concerned about, and it will focus on that. It will do it. You could be like, oh, why did the implementer do this thing? Like, why? If you're reviewing someone else's code, you'd be like, a lot of times in the olden days, some of my review comments would be like, why did you do this? Why is this necessary rather than that? Like, what was this design decision? If it wasn't very well documented. Now it can be more like, you just ask AI like why someone did it, and it can speculate. I mean, yeah, not always right, I guess, but like a lot of times it'd be like, oh yeah, probably they ran into this with the other thing, and so this is why this is like this. Anyway, there used to be this thing where you would switch modes. This is kind of like phase 4 stuff, where in Claude Code, for example, or in Cursor, you might like not YOLO it. Don't do the mode switch stuff anymore. Just have it on. My recommendation is just have everything on YOLO settings, full permissions. You can have a blacklist of like don't. What we have is a blacklist of like don't git commit basically, and then don't git stash and these kinds of things, because those are tools we use to like kind of review and govern the AI. But like we allow it access to pretty much everything else. Of course, if you're theoretically concerned it's going to RMRF, then don't do that, or don't allow that. But in general, it's actually nice to have it delete files, and I've never heard of someone having their system deleted by AI. So, yeah, but anyway, tell it to plan, right? If you're going to tackle a really complicated thing, tell it to make a plan. It can make a huge markdown file, be like, no, this is bad, improve the markdown file, build up an awesome markdown file with like an awesome plan, and then kill that chat, start a new one, be like, implement this plan, or be like, implement the first two steps of this plan, whatever. Super, super powerful, great way to like build your own understanding of a repo. If you're like, hey, how should we do this? Or what do you think about this? Or how does this code work? Or like, what's the correct way to implement this? Whatever. Then you can do all of that just by building a plan. What was one other thing I was going to say about that? Yeah, you don't always need to build a plan, but it's a super powerful way to like do a more complicated thing. Also, if you aren't sure how to tackle something, a lot of times one of the problems with AI is it just like tries something, maybe it doesn't work, and then it like hyper optimizes that one thing, and you just like wish that it had surveyed the field to like look for the better ideas first. Super powerful thing you can do is be like, hey, I have this bug. Generate 6 solutions for how to do this, and then pick the best, and then recommend me the best two, and I'll decide. Or something like that, or even just pick the best one yourself and then go for it. That's like a hack to kind of like get it to really think things through and plan a few different possibilities, and then pick the best one. You could also say, write down all 6 ideas in a doc, and then in a new chat be like, hey, evaluate these 6 ideas, which one is the best way to solve this bug. Okay, and then I want to talk about exploration. So um, AI is really good at like finding the relevant stuff. So you can always just be like, hey, where's that file that does this thing? Or do we have a function on the front end that converts such and such to whatever? Or when did look at the get blame on this line, like when did this change? Or remember this old PR, find it and see what we did there and do something similar in this case. Whatever it is, anything like that. Super good at exploring, finding those kinds of things. In addition, tokens and AI is very cheap and very fast compared to an engineer's time. So I would say just like even the hardest tasks that AI can't do, give it a try. What's going to happen is, well, A, you'll be surprised and it'll do a great job and you'll be like, oh, this is great. B, if it doesn't do that, you'll at least know what files are relevant. You'll know what not to do. You might be able to iterate. You might even just get reset hard. I do this sometimes if it does a really bad job in the first implementation. I get reset hard and then I try again and I say, here's what not to do and here's the relevant files. And then I just have a way better prompt the second time because I like know, I've learned, I know what not to do. I reviewed the files, I get reset hard, just try again. New chat. So easy. So much better than if you spent all of your time doing your first impression of like a build for a new thing and then you realize it's bad, you have to redo it. Really good at just like trying those explorations. You might even just try a few different times. Like one way that I can imagine agentic coding going, if it doesn't get that much smarter, but which it will, but like if it didn't, but tokens got cheaper, which they will, is like you could have 5 competing implementations of the same feature and then online, and then have an agentic reviewer decide which one's best, or a human reviewer, or you could see which one best matches the spec or produces the best result or whatever. So that's relevant to this topic of exploration. One quick, interesting, counterintuitive thing is that I find AI really good at matters of taste, like naming and stuff like that. You saw it a little bit when I was like, hey, change this copy. Like, I don't really care what, you decide. It's a really great way so that engineers don't have to like debate in reviews about what to name a variable or you don't have to like tweak the microcopy. You don't have to like worry, oh, does this word have connotations for me or them or whatever. Of course, like you can still worry about those things if you want to, but like if you don't have time or don't really care, and just want like a default good thing, you could be like, hey, here's what you should do. If you don't like what it comes up with, just be like, here's the complaint I have with that. Brainstorm five better options for the variable name or function name or whatever. Um, but I have found that AI resolves a lot of debates between developers and a lot of these kinds of matters of taste type of things, and it does like a pretty good job. And it's a way to avoid having to go back and forth in a PR for 3 days about a variable name or something like that. So, something to think about there as well. And then the very last thing is just this question of orchestration. I alluded to this earlier with actually the Ralph loop slide. So that's kind of the hot new topic these days. It's a bit related to a number of things we've talked about, but it's kind of a big workaround to this idea of the context window and the dumb zone and stuff. And it also has to do with planning. And the big idea with like a Ralph loop and that kind of thing is just that one agent makes a plan. In the simplest possible form, one agent makes a plan with a bunch of small subtasks. And then the Ralph loop goes through and reads the plan and it reads the background. And then it's like, okay, I'm just going to do one of these small subtasks and then I'll exit and a new thing starts. And you can kind of run your own Ralph loop. That's basically what I do by having the plan yourself and then telling each thing what to do and killing it when it gets out of the context window. But the big idea going forward here is probably going to be like agents and sub-agents and having them manage each other and review each other and make sure that each one has like a well-scoped task and then wraps up and finishes and maybe generates a summary to hand off to something else and so on and so on. And you can imagine like big networks of agents where each one does like a small part. There's a strong analogy there to kind of how humans might work, particularly in a big organization where a given feature in software might, or a given marketing, campaign or whatever might go through many phases and go through many hands and handoffs and reviews and so on, and get broken down into small steps by a PM and get implemented and get tested and have engineers work on little parts until it's finished, and then go into a marketing flow and have another agent write marketing about the new feature, and so on, so on, so on, right? So big idea there is that some of these agentic systems are going to start to mirror some of our human systems. And one of our bets at Dart, I guess, is that like some of the tools, such as PM tools that we have already built to manage super complex, variable, independent human workflows, will actually be useful for agents as well. So if if a human has a very high level project, they might break it, they might assign it to their PM to figure out how to get it done, plan the project, assign it to engineers, do all the QA, build a workflow, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of that same stuff, eventually maybe all of that same stuff can be done where, a human comes in with an idea and a plan, or the beginnings of a plan, and a complex network of agents is orchestrated then through some kind of PM system to hand stuff off between agents, potentially hand stuff off to humans for review, and deliver the final result. Yeah, a lot of that stuff can be done in Dart now. There's also lots of other tools that can help with these kinds of things. There are Ralph loop tools that help run that kind of thing, and you can also you can be the orchestrator yourself for now, which is kind of what I demoed, where you decide when to make new chats and when to hand stuff off between agents and when to summarize and when to finish and when to review and so on. Anyway, hope this is helpful. Let me know if you have any feedback. Let me know what you're doing better. Always looking for new ideas and new ways to improve. And I'm sure there will be lots of better ideas, particularly going forward. So anyway, hope this is helpful.